Okay, so I've known for some time that I wanted to start recording some videos. And thanks to Abby, by the way, for giving me the idea of using Zoom in this way. Um, right now, I'm just going to use it as a journal entry, kind of. I don't really want to write. So this is what I'm working through right now. For the first time ever, it's like I'm almost semi-planning a move out of social media, which is pretty crazy. And by planning, I don't mean in like a kind of strategic way. Obviously, I'm non-strategic. Um, but in a way of, I don't know, it's so interesting. So last week, or maybe it was like 2 weeks ago, I mentioned on my stories how there's these different creativity, productivity experts, and all of them have defined egos, or the 3 or 4 people that I looked up. And I kind of went on this like polemic, is that how you say the word? About that. And of course, I still find that to be true. But what's interesting also, I think shortly after I had written a post on Substack that started with how I don't like this air of kind of holier than thou that a lot of times I get from the human design world. And the thing is, like, I get it. I've done it. I will still do it. um, it's not about saying, obviously there's such a thing as correctness versus not. But see, even saying that makes it sound so black and white. And when I use the examples of these people who have defined egos and they are coaching, teaching people about how to be consistent in your work practice, and therefore how to produce more. I mean, it's like the hilarious, perfect example of a defined ego for whom that is correct. Or even that is like, you even have to be careful of saying that, because the ego needs its rest, even if it's defined, even if someone has a healthy self-esteem. I've seen so many defined egos who just as likely don't have a healthy self-esteem. Because again, remember, like, go back to the very basics of where we are defined, we are fixed in the nature of that thing. So there can also be unhealthy definition that we have. So I used someone named, what's her name? Marley Grace, who's inspired me for years. She's a single channel 4037, part Seeking the whole community channel. And I followed her, man, like, I don't know if I've ever really followed her on social media, which is interesting. And this is part of why I'm even bringing this up as well. So way back when I lived off grid, which was like in 2016, probably 2017. Yeah, there's a couple years in there. And she got really well known from doing a daily dance practice. So she had an Instagram. The light is really nice right now. I wonder if you can see it. No, you can't at all. She had an Instagram called Personal Practice, and she would do daily dance videos. I might just look at the light while I'm talking. And I like, you can't see, it's like a golden glow, so I'm just gonna look at it while I talk to you. So she had an Instagram called Personal Practice, and she would do these little dance videos, and it got wildly popular. And then from there, she did like a creative space, and I've talked to her about her and her work to so many people because it's really inspired me. But then for the first time, I actually looked up her design, Defined Ego. So what's interesting is I never follow her on social media. Like I can just tell this isn't for me. And there's a lot of, I put her in kind of like a camp of these creative young people, of artists who also they'll sell workshops, or they'll like just sell artwork that they have. They'll sell Substack subscriptions. Um, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. I kind of want to go on a walk. Um, what was I saying? But I don't resonate or care about how they show up on social media. I think the social media thing, like why people liked it when it started out, because I wasn't on there when it first started out. I got on there like 2018, 2019, I think, 2019, but didn't start posting really until 20, 2020, 2019, 2020, when I first started doing my work. So it's always been for me business related. But, you know, we're on there. A big part of why we're on there is to connect with people who we vibe with, right? And it's this very personal kind of space. So it's interesting. I don't follow this little group of artists on social media, even though they use it in a way that I'm like, wow, that seems really ideal. But I think I can't do it that way. Like, I think I need to do a way that is more extreme. Like, they'll do the thing, well, they'll do a little caption, like a few sentences, basically just advertising for their stuff that is off of the social media sphere, off of Instagram. And I don't know, and so, but then I participate in their space, or I don't participate. I consume their content through their Substack or whatever. I've gone off and on of like paying for it at like $5 a month or something. Although I don't think Marley's ever paid for. I've never paid her for any of her work, which is interesting. I've just known she's existed for years. So okay, so this is what's so interesting. It's like, here she's this defined heart, and certainly, you know, that's a big part of, I'm sure, where she ends up teaching from, like probably the kind of content she teaches, her approach, the rules she uses has to do with consistency. And it's even where I'm really curious for this one girl, and Anna Frusco or something. I paid for her Substack for a while, and then I stopped. I kind of just lost interest. I'm curious if she has a defined heart. That would be really interesting. Oh my gosh, what was I saying? What was I saying? The light is gone now. Okay, it's interesting to me that I can look at her design and be like, okay, here's some defined heart stuff. This is true for her. This is true. Like, her part of her story is that she was like an alcoholic. She had a real issue with, actually, I did buy one of her books a long time ago. I can't remember what it was called. It was something about sobriety though, because I was curious. But so she, you know, it's a good example of a defined heart, someone who can just like quit their addiction cold turkey, right? I was gonna say, do I say something personal there or not? I don't think I will. It's about someone in my life, but I don't think I want to go there right now. But the defined heart thing, and being able to say, I'm going to commit to this thing, and, you know, especially, it's an especially interesting example in the case of something like addiction and getting over it, you know, because that's someone who really can make a promise about, I'm going to quit cold turkey and we're going to go through with this, versus an undefined heart. they're not, that's not the thing, right? So it's interesting to me that I can see here, okay, she's maybe being correct for herself of she's selling how to be consistent with your creative practice. But then other people like us undefined hearts can take that in and be like, okay, but I'm not defined for consistency, so none of this applies to me. Right? Or maybe some of the information applies, but just not in a consistent manner. That's what's interesting, right? I mean, that's a whole other area of exploration. So interesting on the one hand that it can be so clear to me that I'm not interested in buying her work. Okay, I know that her take on this is not true for me as far as consistency is concerned. I'm not here to do morning pages. And I use that example also in that story conversation of Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, which is a really famous book. And I've read it at least twice, 2 times in the past. Of having consistent daily writing practices, where the whole term of morning pages came from, where she was like, you need to put your unconscious down on paper and get all of this just like muck out of your brain, and then you'll be ready for the day to do your creative work. And it's like doing morning pages 365 days out of the year, no matter what, no exceptions. And sure enough, when I looked at her chart, she was an undefined heart, which is really interesting, and she was a split. Her split was gate 16. She was unconscious 40 through 23, and then she had 60 through 4, the logical channel from the head to the ajna going down. And then she had 38-28, totally unconscious as well. So she was, I don't want to go into describing it. What was interesting when I was talking about that is, this is a good example. So in the case of the coaches who have defined hearts, right, it's like this thing of the consistency. Okay, that's correct for them. It's just the problem of they're teaching something that is not necessarily correct for other people, right? It's like the classic coaching dilemma of someone with a defined heart telling someone who's undefined to do it the way that they're doing it. Now, what's interesting with Julia Cameron's case is obviously, or maybe this is where I have to be careful. You would think okay, if you're telling everyone, including yourself, that you have to write no matter what 365 days out of the year, okay, that is some undefined heart conditioning, like for sure. What makes it interesting, and then of course pressuring that gate 16 of what are the skills, looking for the skills, right? Like that's going to be her biggest area of conditioning, is that gate 16 being a split definition. It's like one gate right there, one gate that can split up, that can bring everything together. And what's also interesting, as an aside, the tarot master here that I know, who's like in his 70s, he also is a split definition. 43, 23, 28, 38. Wow, that's fucking nuts. He also is the alpha. He also has 31-7, but 2 similar areas of split definition. I didn't talk about this in my stories. And then gate 16, if I'm remembering correctly, yeah, because I remember when James Alexander was here, when they were here for like the Winter Human Design Reprieve or whatever they called it, rest or whatever. We were looking at his chart, Ray's chart, the tarot master, and I remember James Alexander being like, oh, he's looking for the skills, gate 16. So it's interesting. It's a very similar example as Julia Cameron. And when I've spoken to Ray, he is like, he's always felt that he's needed. So he has tarot, he has astrology, he's a very accomplished tropical astrologer, so Western astrology in a very kind of intuitive way. And then he always felt it was really important to have multiple skills. Literally, that's what he says. And so he was thinking maybe the third one for him will be human design. And I don't think he's gotten seriously into it, apart from knowing he's a projector and some like he got into it back in the 90s or something, but he never really applied it to his work. But he's really into metaphysics and so on. But anyways, just super interesting. And I don't know enough about Julia Cameron to know if there's other skills that she's concerned with having as an example of what is the greatest conditioning element in her design, right? Based on the gated skills, based on that bridging gate. But writing every day, yeah, okay, that's not self stuff. Like forcing yourself to do that every single day. What is interesting though, and this is where I think someone had responded to my story about Julia Cameron and was like, I disagree with you that it's not self of her to write every day. She's like, as a writer myself and who has a very similar design as Julia Cameron, just lost my train of thought. She was like, for writers, writing every day. I don't know if she said every day, but writing consistently. Maybe it was writing every day. I don't know. But in some sense, like forcing yourself to write helps you get past the self-doubt as a writer. Which absolutely, like I'm totally get that. I'm totally behind that. And yet you don't need to force yourself to write every day. Like you just don't. But what I keep saying, that I keep coming back to, is like there is a component there where I wonder, it's like what I was saying, I did say in my stories, like, or this is a different thing, but I was like, so, okay, so she's bridging these two different areas of individuality that are totally unconscious. So where I could see it being correct is like, it's her way, because both those individual channels are unconscious, it's her way of making her unconscious known to her. And so maybe the consistency of writing, by not forcing it, is going to help her see the mutation when it comes. Because 4323s are famous for like not knowing what's inside of them until it comes out of their mouth, you know? There was something else that I was going to say. So that seems correct for me, basically. Like, that's like, okay, yeah, I could see that. But it's like I mentioned in the original conversation about all of this, forcing yourself to write every day it's like you're not trusting the mutation if individuality is a part of your design, someone, that's what's interesting. It's like someone like Marley Grace, where she's only tribal, she just has a 4037 and she's created this community space. She does all these workshops. It's very much about community belonging. So I mean, she basically can write and talk about tribal matters. You know what I mean? It's not a matter of the individual thing of like, is it there? Like, is it the breakthrough yet? Do I have something to say yet? Like that's not part of it. Plus she has a defined ego. So all of it, it's like, it's correct for her, Anyways, I didn't think I'd go off on all of this. It's like such a huge conversation. There's so many different parts to it. But what is interesting to me is that I can like look at Marley Grace and be like, okay, like I know her work isn't for me, or at least the consistency thing isn't. Maybe there's other stuff I would get from her work. I don't know. Maybe, you know. In fact, I still think that one of the most important things that I got from my original spiritual community before human design was, I don't know, I just connected to those people in a different way, for sure, than I have with human design people. And that those relationships are still a part of my life, you know? It's just pretty wild. And this is something that I'm finally realizing. It's so interesting. It's been 6 months. I still haven't gone back to make the original point I wanted to make, but it's okay. It's been 6 months since I left my first Instagram account. And I just like ghosted everyone. And like I understand that now. Like I understand not the harm. It's not like I always used to think about it in this negative way of being like, oh man, like I just like tarnished, or I don't know, is that the word? Is that a word? I just hurt my fourth line network by just like totally piecing out like that. But then I'd always be like, okay, like stop making yourself wrong, forget about it. It's only now, like literally as of today, that I can see, oh, like all I would have to do is to go back and be like, hey, look, I've been over this like 6-month journey. I created this new account. I thought for this and that, the other reason, because I thought the reason that I originally I moved over to the Your Existential Sherpa account was because I thought I wanted to do exclusively just more human design content, or like my stuff was becoming so human design oriented and I'd stopped closed stories that I felt like I was just going to be isolating people anyway. So there was a lot of insecurity motivating the move over. Like I thought it was about, oh, I'm so into human design, not everyone is into this, I'm just going to move over and it'll be just for people who like just want what I'm doing, right? Like my work or whatever. But I realized it wasn't really about that. I think part of it was like the 6-9 transition of becoming more aloof and like, you know, wanting just those soulmate bonds or whatever, I guess. And that makes total sense. That's like perfect. But I also think it's about this larger move away from social media as a whole. Okay, so anyways, my original point. Okay, so I can look at Marley Grace's work and be like, okay, like your work isn't entirely for me, but this is what's so interesting. Like I don't follow you on social media, and yet like I love to read her newsletter. And it's so interesting to me because she's not someone that I normally would vibe with at all. I can just tell. She also got like gender reconstruction surgery. Like she cut off her boobs. I've never met anyone who's done that. And it's not even a judgment thing. It's just like I don't know anyone who would do that. You know, like this is like totally outside of kind of my social circle kind of thing. But I enjoy her as a person. You know what I mean? Like she's pure tribal that I now know. And it's interesting to get to see and experience that. And I really enjoy reading her Substack post. And what's so interesting, okay, this is maybe the whole point that I'm getting to, is like my whole being like today, being like, oh, like maybe I'll move away from social media. Like maybe this is it. It was from her Substack post where at the end she'll put resources, podcast episodes, books, stuff from her friends. She'll put like a list at the bottom, which is a great idea. And there was a podcast she put about, what is it even called again? I've been listening to it all day long. This is the whole point. It's called Off the Grid. Sorry. Called Off the Grid. Why can't you just go to... Okay, I guess the actual podcast is called Off the Grid, Leaving Social Media Without Losing All Your Clients. And then Softer Sounds, I think, is the business name. Anyways, I've been listening to it all day, and I've really been enjoying and appreciating it, because I didn't know this was a whole movement. Like, I didn't know that now people have businesses, or at least, a section of their business is devoted to helping people do this. It's so interesting. And they brought up the whole topic of like, try not to ghost your followers, of just like full on leaving, like, and obviously integrated in that is a conversation the way that I would frame it. Like, if it's correct for you to spontaneously go, then spontaneously go, whatever, and that's the way that I imagine I will probably do it, while I've also been having conversations in my head as of today of going on and being like, hey, I'm probably gonna be moving away from social media over time. Like, this is the beginning of that. But I'm also waiting to see, because that still feels too kind of strategic for me. Like, she has a very strategic approach. It's not correct for me. However, like, I do genuinely miss, this is the thing, I do genuinely miss the people that I just like for my former account, when I just pieced out, like, I totally lost a whole sector of human beings that I really enjoyed interacting with, who were just into nature, or like they weren't even into anything human design or astrology, but I met them from my former community, and they felt, I imagine, that I just like pieced out and was just like, don't care about you anymore. And that's just not the case, So yeah, here I am, someone I do not follow on social media, but I read her newsletter, her Substack post, her content in that way, in the longer form writing, and who is a defined heart, and defined heart stuff is not correct for me. So I'm like, I've been iffy about ever looking into her content much for like paid versions, and yet still I have an attraction to what she's doing. And then through her, I come across this podcast that is changing my world about moving away from social media. It's just so interesting to me. I don't even think I'm explaining this fully, obviously, because I've been talking about this for at least 30 minutes. And what's so funny too is I thought I was getting on here to talk about the way this new moon in Pisces was affecting me, just to like look at things, and it is interesting. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Let's see. Share screen. Okay, so the new moon is, and I guess it was more official, on February 20th. So 2 days ago. Oh, that was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday was funny. I just kind of escaped. I literally went on a Harry Potter marathon with Devin. It was great. And then today I was just like suddenly pedal to the metal. Okay, so the new moon is happening it was like at 1 degree Pisces, which is also an interesting degree to consider. 1 degree Pisces, the 11th house. And so 11th house is, the area of life related to friends, but more so acquaintances. Like, it's like those friends that are loosely your friends, that they don't actually know anything really personal about you. It's just like, it's like someone that you see around frequently and you chat with, it's like your barista that you talk to, it's the house of Aquarius. So it's very much the world of social media, which is really interesting. When I was looking at reading the astrology description of this new moon, which is really interesting. So I'm pretty sure, let's bring up the human design. I think the new moon is in gate. I never look at this kind of thing really. I think it's in gate 30 of desire. Let's see. February 21st. Let's put it at 5 a.m. Ashley. Oh, that's UTC time. Let's see. Oh, no, because the sun's in 55. Is that a Pisces gate? I guess it is. Hold on. Am I sharing the right screen? Yeah, I am. Show mandala. Yeah, Pisces. Oh. I don't know. I honestly don't know much about the Mondo wheel, but I didn't realize that 30 and 55 are right next to each other. Okay. No, okay, 30 is an Aquarius gate. Okay. Yeah. So then that means the sun was just in 30. I don't even remember that. Is that true? What do we have there now? We have Saturn. Oh, yeah. Okay. Whew. I remember now. Yeah. So we had Sun conjunct Saturn. Let's look in our astrology chart. Yeah. So we still have Sun conjunct Saturn. So anyway, so this astrology summary of the new moon was like, it's a new moon time in Pisces. It's this kind of dreaming time, which was super interesting, like as a way of reading the collective energy as an astrologer, as this woman, because then when you look at the human design version, we have the channel fantasy going on. So I was like, okay, yeah, that totally works with human design too. And then, so right now we have Saturn in 30. I haven't looked at the ephemeris for a while, but that's interesting. The strength derived from knowledge and experience that 2 steps forward and 1 step back is still 1 step forward. Each new feeling brings back an old feeling before progress can take place. It's very interesting given also what I'm talking about. Influence of the transits. Okay, that feels like Mars just went into line 6 of 35. Rectification, it's in detriment there. A destructive tendency that in its personal application may be the necessary severity to ensure correction, but when applied generally, it will meet resistance and tend to reinforce rather than rectify situations. Correction, which brings change through severity and even destruction, will always meet resistance. Anyways, I was not thinking of looking at the experiential way influence right now, apart from 30. So I don't want to get into that right now. Feels way too mental for me. But okay, the new moon in Pisces. Okay, so I had this very dreaming energy, right? It's a new moon, it's in Pisces, it's at 1 degree. And yet the sun is conjunct Saturn. So this the astrologer was saying, okay, dream of something, but like be committed to it. And I was just like, ugh, like it was like more undefined heart conditioning stuff, you got to be careful of using those words. I mean, you just do. If you're not here to make commitments, like, or know that you can keep them over time, you know? So, and yet when I read that, I was like, I wonder if I should do some kind of video talking about how astrology is the transits. Astrology is the program, right? Whatever the planets are doing, that is the program. But is it what I'm experiencing right now with social media? Am I committing to something, being like, okay, this is the beginning of my movement away from it? And I don't know if that's just transits or if it's actually happening. And that's why that's what's so interesting to me about this whole thing. It's like, here I am doing a video about it instead of jumping on social media and talking about it. Like, I have no desire all of a sudden to do that. And so this is part of the beauty of the other side of transits, is like, yes, it's programming, but it's like, I think I always try to say about the other side of programming and the transits is it may also be the exact right programming we need to gain more awareness around that thing that's happening in our life. Because remember, like, astrology is describing what is going on in our human, which is with our personality, which is like, in the language of human design, so long as we can just watch it and not do something about it, okay, that is gaining awareness. That is the whole point of all of this. Okay, anyways, I'm gonna end there, I think, because this has already gotten really long and I already went further and all over the place than I thought that I would. And hopefully I got my point across. Give me feedback if you have any. This was fun. This is actually the first time I've done this. 6 months since I first started talking about it, and I finally just got on and did one, and I really enjoyed it.